San Antonio, Texas, summer of 2036. The heat outside was brutal, but nothing compared to the fire burning in my chest when I opened the email a friend had sent me. Inside was the seating chart for my brother Gabriel's wedding. I scrolled down once, twice, over and over, but my name wasn't there, not anywhere. For a second, I wanted to believe it was a mistake, some oversight in the software. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't an accident. Gabriel and my mother had decided it long ago. Alina always drags us down. This wedding needs to be perfect. She doesn't belong there. My hand clenched around the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. They hadn't just cut me from a guest list. They had erased me from the very family I grew up in, from the home I had spent years trying to belong to. And in that silence, a familiar question rose in my chest. What did I ever do to deserve being the outsider in my own family? The seating chart stayed on my screen, but my mind drifted back years. This wasn't new. It never was. When I won first place in the state writing competition, I ran home, clutching the certificate like it was proof I finally mattered. My mother looked up from her magazine and said, "That's nice, Alina. Don't brag about it, okay?" But when Gabriel hit a game-winning three-pointer in high school basketball, the entire family threw a party. Balloons, cake, relatives invited over just to hear the story. I remember sitting in the corner, clapping, smiling, pretending I wasn't invisible. When I got hired as an engineer on a classified defense project, my father's only comment was, "At least you've got a stable paycheck." That was it. Years of late nights, years of building something important, and it boiled down to a paycheck. Meanwhile, when Gabriel got accepted into law school, they toasted with champagne. Mom cried. Dad said, "You're going to make us proud, son." The truth is, I had spent my entire life chasing a nod, a word, any sign that I belonged in their spotlight. But no matter how hard I tried, I was never enough. And now, being erased from the wedding guest list wasn't just a snub. It was the final stamp that said, "You were never part of us." The night I found out, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, the words repeated, "You don't belong." Around 7 a.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. For a moment, I thought it was another telemarketer. I almost didn't answer, but something in me did. "Alina." The voice on the other end was steady, commanding, impossible to mistake. Colonel Harris. He had served with my father decades ago. To me, he was the only man who ever treated me like I had more to offer than just being Gabriel's quiet sister. Years back, he'd seen my work on a defense project and told me, "You've got a mind sharper than most people I ever led in uniform. Don't let anyone dim it." Now, out of nowhere, he said, "I heard your brother's wedding is this weekend." I swallowed hard. I wasn't invited. "Then that's their mistake," he said firmly. "Because you'll be there, and when you walk into that room, no one will be able to erase your name." I sat there in silence, my breath caught in my throat. Why would he care? Why would he bother? As if sensing the question, his tone softened. "Alina, sometimes families don't see what they have until someone else makes them look. You've carried yourself with honor in places most people wouldn't survive. It's time the people closest to you knew that." His words cut through the years of silence, the years of being invisible. For the first time, someone wasn't telling me to stay quiet, to stay small. By the time the call ended, I realized something. Maybe this wasn't about crashing a wedding. Maybe it was about reclaiming the part of me my family had ignored for far too long. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of my closet longer than I care to admit. What do you wear to a day your own family tried to erase you from? I pulled out a midnight blue dress I'd only worn once at a military gala. It wasn't flashy, but it carried weight, dignity without apology. I slipped on a pair of heels, pinned my hair back, and fastened a small silver necklace my grandmother once gave me. The only thing, maybe, that ever felt like family. I wrote a simple card for Gabriel and his bride. Just 3 lines. Wishing you a marriage filled with kindness. Kindness grows into courage, and courage is what keeps love alive. No sarcasm, no bitterness. Just words I meant, even if I doubted they would ever understand them. When I arrived at the hotel, the lobby was buzzing with guests in satin dresses and sharp suits. Their laughter echoed across marble floors. No one looked at me twice. No one suspected that I wasn't supposed to be there. At the check-in desk, the coordinator glanced at her list, then nodded. "Here you are, guest of Colonel Harris." She handed me a ribboned place card. I tucked it into my clutch and stared at the ballroom doors just a few feet away. Behind them was a family who had decided I didn't deserve to exist on this day. My heart pounded so loud it felt like a drumline in my chest. But then I remembered the Colonel's words. "Don't apologize for walking in." So I lifted my chin, straightened my shoulders, and stepped into the fire. The ballroom shimmered with candlelight and champagne flutes, every detail curated for perfection. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, and white roses framed the head table where Gabriel sat beside his bride, glowing in a magazine-perfect gown. At first, no one noticed me. A few relatives blinked in surprise, some whispered, others shifted uncomfortably when they realized who I was. My mother's smile froze mid-sentence. Gabriel's jaw tightened, his hand tightening around a champagne glass. Then, from across the room, Colonel Harris stood. His presence alone was enough to draw silence, his posture commanding, his voice carrying like a man used to being obeyed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, the string quartet quieting behind him. "Before we continue celebrating this fine couple, I'd like to acknowledge someone whose name may not appear on your programs, but whose presence tonight deserves recognition." A ripple went through the room. My pulse thundered in my ears. Gabriel's bride glanced at him nervously, and my mother's hand clutched the tablecloth like it might tear. Colonel Harris turned and gestured toward me. "This young woman once stood between me and a disaster that could have ended very badly. Because of her skill, her judgment, and her courage, I'm standing here today. She has lived her life doing hard things quietly without applause, and I believe that ends tonight." The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Then applause, real applause, not polite clapping, not forced smiles. It rose and spread like a wave across the room until every eye was on me. I rose slowly, my knees steady despite the weight of a lifetime pressing down. I let the silence hold for just a beat before speaking. "Thank you," I said simply, my voice carrying farther than I expected. "For those who don't know me, I'm Gabriel's sister. And while I didn't think I'd be here tonight, I'm glad I am, not to steal the spotlight, not to explain myself, just to remind you sometimes showing up is enough." The applause grew louder, genuine, filling the spaces my family had tried to leave empty. I looked across the room at Gabriel, at my mother. Their faces were polite masks, but their eyes told another story. For the first time in years, they couldn't pretend I didn't exist. The applause eventually faded and the music returned, but the air around me still pulsed with what had just happened. I excused myself from the main tables, slipping toward a quieter hallway near the service doors. That's when I heard heels clicking against the floor. My mother. She moved fast, her face a perfect social smile for anyone watching, but when she reached me, her eyes were sharp enough to cut glass. "You had no right," she hissed under her breath. I tilted my head. "No right to attend my own brother's wedding." Her lips tightened. To hijack the attention, this was Gabriel's day. I let the silence hang for a moment before answering, calm but firm. And he still has his day. The photos, the speeches, the cake, all his. I only took back one thing tonight, my name. Her jaw clenched. For a flicker of a second, I saw something beneath her mask, resentment, yes, but also fear. Fear that the version of the family she'd polished for years had cracked and people had seen it. Behind her, Gabriel appeared, his tie loosened, his face red with frustration. "Why did you come?" he snapped. "You don't fit here, you never did." The words stung, but I steadied myself, meeting his eyes. "That's the difference between us, Gabriel. You think belonging is something your mother can hand out like an invitation. I know it's something you earn by standing your ground." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The silence between us was louder than any argument. Finally, my mother straightened, adjusting her pearl necklace like it could somehow reset the night. "You've always been too quick to take offense," she said coldly. I shook my head, my voice steady. "No, I've just stopped pretending that exclusion is kindness." For once, she had no reply. I stayed in that quiet hallway until the music swelled again from the ballroom, laughter spilling out like nothing had happened. My mother and Gabriel drifted back inside, their masks perfectly reset for the cameras and the crowd. I didn't follow. Instead, I walked toward the lobby, my heels tapping against the marble floor. The farther I got from the ballroom, the lighter I felt. Colonel Harris found me near the doors, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. He handed me one with a small smile. "You handled yourself with restraint," he said. I gave a quiet laugh. "I learned from the best." He studied me for a moment before nodding. "They won't forget tonight, not because you embarrassed them, but because you showed them what presence looks like." I looked back once. Through the open doors, I saw Gabriel spinning his bride under the chandeliers, my mother laughing too loudly at something a guest said. It was their perfect picture again, repainted as if I hadn't existed. And that was fine, because tonight I didn't come for their recognition. I came to reclaim my own. I set the champagne down, thanked the colonel, and stepped out into the Texas night. The air was warm, the sky scattered with stars. For the first time in years, I felt no weight pressing me down. I wasn't leaving with a family, but I was leaving with something better. The unshakable truth that I could walk into any room, no matter who tried to keep me out, and still belong.